Okay, so you want to be a billionaire but you own nothing? Here's a stranger idea that sounds like a riddle until you understand it. What if the real secret isn't owning more? What if the highest level of the game is being worth billions while owning almost nothing? Let me show you what I mean with one number. There was a man named Ingvar Kamprad, who was the founder of IKEA, the flat-pack furniture giant you've almost certainly bought a bookshelf from. For years, Forbes ranked him one of the richest people on the entire planet top 10, brushing up against the very top of the list. And then one year, his lawyers produced documents proving something odd, that Kamprad didn't actually own IKEA. On paper, he barely owned anything at all. So Forbes dropped him from around number 11 in the world, all the way down to number 162. Same man, with the same empire, having same furniture. He just didn't own it. That wasn't poverty. Owning nothing was the flex because you think wealth means owning a loy of things you know. The mansion, the jet, the company, the stock, and the more your name is on, the richer you are. It's the most natural belief in the world, and the richest people on earth have quietly built their entire lives around the opposite of it. Owning things, it turns out, is a trap. The real move is what that separates the merely rich from the untouchable, is to own nothing and control everything. By the end of this video, you'll understand exactly why your name on the deed is a liability and not a prize. The three-word playbook that lets a billionaire live like a king while reporting almost no income and paying almost no tax. And how one man turned owning nothing into an empire that can never be bought, never be taxed properly, and never even be inherited. Stick around for that last part of this video, because it's the most extreme version of this idea ever built. Let's learn how to own nothing. First question in everyone's mind would be, why is owning things a trap? Because the moment your name is on something, so is everything that comes with it. Think about what ownership actually means. You own the mansion, so you pay the property tax on it every year and forever. You own the stock, so the day you sell it, the government takes a cut of your gains. You own the company in your own name, so when someone sues, they're suing you. Your personal fortune is on the table. And here's the big one that people forget. You own it all when you die, so a huge slice of everything you built can get taken in estate tax before your kids ever see it. Ownership isn't just having. Ownership is being on the hook, so the wealthy flip it. They separate the two things everyone assumes go together, owning a thing and controlling a thing, and they keep only the half that has no downside. They put the mansion in a trust. They put the company under a holding company. They put the empire inside a foundation. And then they simply use it all. You live in the house the trust owns. You fly on the jet the company owns. You run the business the foundation owns. You get every ounce of the benefit, and none of the tax, none of the liability, none of the estate bill, and your name isn't on the deed. Your name is on the control. And it turns out is the only part that was ever worth having. Now, that handles the mansions and the companies, but there's a deeper version of this for the biggest fortunes of all, and it has a name. Three words that quietly run the top of the wealth pyramid: buy, borrow, die. Here's the problem it solves. Say you own billions in stock. On paper, you're one of the richest people alive, but there's a catch. The second you sell any of that stock to get actual cash, the government taxes your gains. Selling is what triggers the tax. So the ultra-wealthy came up with an elegant answer: never sell, ever. Instead, you buy assets that quietly grow in value untaxed, because unsold gains aren't income. Then when you need cash to live for the yacht, the house, the lifestyle, you don't sell a single share. You borrow against them. You walk into a bank, point at your billions in stock, and the bank hands you a low-interest loan using that stock as collateral. And here's the magic. A loan is not income. Simply, you don't pay tax on borrowed money. So you fund the most luxurious life imaginable on loans, while your actual taxable income stays close to zero. And this isn't a theory. In 2021, the newsroom ProPublica got hold of the actual IRS tax records of America's richest people, and the numbers were staggering. In 2018, Elon Musk, one of the richest men on earth, paid $0 in federal income tax. Literally zero. Warren Buffett, over one stretch, paid what amounted to a true tax rate of about 1/10%, while his wealth grew by tens of billions. Across the 25 richest Americans, their fortunes grew by around $400 billion over a few years, and they paid a real tax rate of roughly 3.5% on that growth. Less than a schoolteacher. Not because they broke any law, but because they never sold, they just borrowed. On paper, they owned enormous wealth and earned almost nothing. And then comes the third word, die. When you pass away, your heirs inherit your assets at their current value, and under the rules, all those decades of untaxed gains get wiped clean. The loans get settled from the estate, and the family walks away with the empire, the tax on a lifetime of growth having quietly vanished. Buy, borrow, die. You never sold, so you never paid, and neither in the end did they. Now, before I show you the man who took own nothing further than anyone alive, drop it in the comments. Does this make you angry that the richest people legally pay a smaller share than a nurse, or do you kind of respect the genius of it and want to learn to do it yourself? Anger or admiration? Be honest, because this one splits people right down the middle. And if you like having the real machinery of wealth taken apart and laid out in front of you, subscribe to this channel. And pulling apart exactly how the rich actually work is the entire reason it exists. Okay, now the masterpiece, the most extreme own-nothing machine ever engineered. Back to Ingvar Kamprad. Kamprad started IKEA in 1943 at 17 years old, selling pens and picture frames out of a shed in a tiny Swedish village. Over decades, he grew it into the largest furniture retailer on the planet. And as it grew, Kamprad, famously, obsessively frugal, a man who drove an old car and flew economy class his whole life, faced the classic rich person's problem. Sweden had brutal taxes. If he kept owning IKEA, the taxes and the eventual inheritance bill could tear the company apart when he died. So in 1982, he did something breathtaking. He gave it away. He handed 100% of his ownership of the IKEA operating empire to a Dutch foundation. He set up the Stichting Inca Foundation, and the structure he built is one of the strangest and most brilliant pieces of corporate engineering in the world, because that foundation doesn't answer to shareholders. It has no owner in the normal sense. In legal terms, it essentially owns itself. Think about what that does. Because no one owns IKEA, no one can ever buy it. It's actually immune to takeover forever. Because it sits in a foundation, the fortune inside it is shielded from the taxes a normal company would pay. Kamprad gave his equity away. He could truthfully say he didn't own it, which is exactly why Forbes had to drop him from the top of the list. And because it's locked in this structure, his own heirs can never sell it off or break it apart. He built a machine designed to be immortal, an empire that outlives its founder, because its founder made sure on paper that it was never his to begin with. And here's the part that turns this from clever into a genuine scandal. That foundation, the one that owns IKEA, became at one point the wealthiest charitable foundation on Earth, sitting on an estimated $36 to $60 billion. A charity richer than almost any on the planet. And for years, according to reporting by The Economist, it gave away barely over €1 million a year, funneled mostly to a single design institute. The richest charity in the world, and one of the least generous in the same breath. A 2016 report for the European Parliament estimated this kind of structure cost European governments at least €1 billion in lost taxes over just a few years. Kamprad himself, who lived in tax exile in Switzerland for around 40 years, once described tax efficiency as simply a natural part of IKEA's low-cost culture. So sit with the whole picture. Here is a man who controlled a $40 billion empire, lived like a king, shaped every decision, and, on paper, owned almost nothing, paid remarkably little, and gave his fortune to a charity that mostly just owned his company. That is, own nothing, control everything, carved into stone. Not a trick he used once. A machine built to run forever. Now let me give you the threats nobody mentions about the own nothing game, because it is not free. If you are still listening to me, it means my efforts are true. So please do like this video and also subscribe to Stupid Rich Math. It will be worth it in future, trust me. Okay, threat 1 is to own nothing. You have to actually give up ownership, and that's terrifyingly real. Put your empire in a foundation or a trust and you genuinely no longer own it in the simple sense. You're trusting a structure, a board, a set of trustees, a document written years ago. Set it up even slightly wrong, and you can lose the very control you were trying to protect. Families have gone to war for generations over exactly who really commands the trust. The price of owning nothing is that you can't always just do whatever you want with it anymore. Threat 2 is the whole game depends on loopholes, and governments are coming for them. The buy, borrow, die playbook, the foundations, the step up at death, all of it rests on tax laws that are increasingly under attack. There are serious proposals around the world to tax unrealized gains, to impose a minimum tax on billionaires, to close the death loophole entirely. When ProPublica exposed those near-zero tax bills, it wasn't just embarrassing, it put a target on the entire structure. The machine is legal today. Tomorrow is a political decision. Threat 3 is borrowing against your own empire can detonate. Buy, borrow, die works beautifully while your assets keep rising and interest rates stay low. But borrow heavily against your stock. And if that stock crashes, the bank can issue a margin call demanding its money back immediately, forcing you to sell at the worst possible moment, at the bottom, sometimes losing control of the very thing you borrowed against. People have been wiped out overnight this way. The strategy that makes you untouchable in a bull market can be the exact thing that destroys you in a crash. So let's do the real math on owning nothing. The optimistic version is that you separate ownership from control, put everything in the right structures, never sell, borrow when you need cash, and shield your empire from tax, lawsuits, and the estate bill. You live like royalty while your name is on almost nothing. Done right, it's the most durable form of wealth ever devised. An empire that survives markets, lawsuits, and even your own death. This is why the very richest families have done it for generations. The realistic version is that you lose real control to a structure you no longer fully command. A crash triggers a margin call while you're borrowed to the hilt, or a change in the law quietly demolishes the loophole your whole plan was built on. The difference between untouchable and undone isn't how clever your structure is, it's whether the markets and the lawmakers keep cooperating. And here's the reframe to leave you with. You came in believing that wealth means owning things your name on the deed. The title, the trophy on the shelf. That's what the rest of us are taught to chase. The people at the very top learned the opposite and built their whole lives on it. Owning is for people who can't afford the lawyers to stop owning. Because the instant your name is on something, so is the tax on it, the lawsuit over it, and the government's cut of it when you die. So they keep the one half that matters, the control, and they let go of the half that costs, the ownership. Ingvar Kamprad built one of the largest fortunes in human history by, on paper, giving almost all of it away to a company that owns itself. He died controlling an empire he technically didn't own. And that wasn't him losing. That was him winning so completely that he made his own name disappear from the one place everyone else is desperate to see it, the deed. If this changed how you think about being rich, tell me in the comments, anger or admiration, which one won in the end? And if you want to see which other obvious things about money are secretly backwards, subscribe because that is the whole point of this channel. This has been Stupid Rich Math. Now go find out who really owns the things you thought you understood.